Hello, welcome to another edition of 5-Minute FRQ, where I take you through an old AP Bio FRQ in 5 minutes or less. As always, this information is freely available on the College Board's AP Bio website, so if you have any questions, you can look it up. All right, this is question 6 off the 2013 AP exam, and it's a pretty short question, so let's get right to it. The following data were collected by observing subcellular structures of 3 different types of eukaryotic cells, and it shows me a cell X, a cell Y, and a cell Z, and tells me the relative amounts of smooth ER, rough ER, mitochondria, cilia, and Golgi bodies. 5 different cell organelles or cell parts. And the question says, based on an analysis of the data, identify a likely primary function of each cell type and explain how the data support the identification. So the way this question was graded is with 3 points, and you got a point for each one for cell X, Y, and Z for identifying it and explaining it. On the current version of the AP exam, the fact that there are 2 words bolded in the question, identify and explain, would likely tell you that those are worth separate points, but this is from 2013. It was an older version of the exam, and you got 1 point for saying the identity and the function, or the explanation for each cell part. Okay, let's get right to it. So cell X, I see some smooth ER, I see some rough ER, I see a lot of mitochondria, and I see cilia and no Golgi bodies. So mitochondria obviously give the cell energy through ATP production, and cilia makes me think transport. Either it's transporting the cell itself, or the cell is involved in transporting something through an organism. So for cell X, I'm thinking it's for movement or for transport, based upon it having lots of mitochondria and cilia. Let's look at all 3 cells before we go look at the rubric. So for cell Y, I see lots of smooth ER, lots of rough ER, some mitochondria, no cilia, and lots of Golgi bodies. So the 2 types of ER, so smooth ER, there's 2 main functions that come to mind. One is the synthesis of lipids, which is one thing smooth ER does, and the other one is detoxification of drugs. So rough ER, having ribosomes, that makes me think that it's protein synthesis, and the fact that this cell has lots of Golgi bodies, proteins are oftentimes stored and processed in Golgi bodies. So for cell Y, rather, I'm thinking that it's either detoxification of drugs or lipid synthesis, or maybe protein synthesis because it has the rough ER and the Golgi bodies. Again, when we look at the rubric, there's more than one thing that they accepted. Cell Z is interesting. Cell Z has none of them. And when I first saw this question, I'm like, well, maybe cell Z is just dead, which actually was one thing that the exam took. When I thought about it longer, I'm thinking, well, what kinds of cells would basically be empty? And transport comes to mind. If you think about xylem, at functional maturity, xylem are largely just empty because xylem transports water up, typically up a plant, and you just need lots of volume to move the water. So you might not need organelles to do transport. Okay, so scrolling down, let's look at what they took. And notice you had to identify a function and the explanation to get the point. So for cell X, look what they took. So locomotion or movement as a function. For the explanation, the thing about this question was you had to say some very specific things to get the full point. So for locomotion, you had to say that it has cilia for movement and lots of mitochondria to provide the energy. You can't just say the cilia or the mitochondria, you had to say both. For cell Y, look what they took. They took the idea of making proteins because it has lots of rough ER and Golgi, so you had to say both. If you went the lipid or hormone synthesis route or detoxification of drugs, that works. And the explanation would be because it has lots of smooth ER to do those functions. And for Z, there were 5 different things that they took, at least on the rubric. So my first thought was, and if you look at how the rubric is arranged, here I have, you could say this or this, and the fact that it doesn't require organelles. So the cell could have no function, or you could say the cell is dead, or doing apoptosis because you don't need organelles if you're dead. Transport was one thing they accepted. Oxygen transport in plant cells, water transport in animal cells, water transport in plant cells like xylem because you don't need organelles to do that. They also took protection, like if you're a skin cell. Support if you're some kind of vascular tissue, again, like xylem. Or storage too. Something like hemoglobin that does lots of storage. Having the cell empty maximizes the space, which again, being empty does not require organelles. Okay, I got it under 5 minutes. Hope that was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.